Hello, it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing for Papermaze, and I'm working with Echo Park's The Magic of Christmas collection. I think it's the second layout I've made with this collection now, and I'm really enjoying it. The traditional reds and greens just make for fantastic Christmassy layouts. And I've got a photo of my little boy today stood in front of a Christmas tree. Back at the beginning of December we went ice skating and they had loads of Christmas trees. It's one of those sort of pop-up ice rinks that you get at Christmas time at a garden centre. But I love this one because rather than it being that kind of tiles of ice or that fake ice that you get, this is actually real ice. So it's fantastic and it's so beautiful there. They decorate it with loads of stuff. There's loads of Christmas trees, like giant nutcrackers and snowmen and deer, everything you could think of. And this photo is of my little boy stood in front of a Christmas tree that was really beautiful and so tall, and it was completely decorated in red and white. No other colours on it at all, I don't think. It was all red and white. So I've picked out some pattern papers to match. Obviously it was really easy to do with this collection because they are all mainly reds and greens. There are a few that have kind of like a caramel or biscuit kind of colour to them, but more on the A sides, and I focused here a bit more on the B sides because the patterns are a little bit more subtle and less busy. So I've picked out these papers. I've also gone for this holly one that's got a bit of red, white and green on it, just to break it all up a little bit. I wanted some pattern in there. A lot of the other ones are sort of very subtle, or these kind of gingham plaid patterns. So that holly one, just to sit behind my photo there, just brought in a little bit more detail and pattern to the page. And I'm sort of cutting fishtails out of all of these strips. I've cut them in various widths and lengths, and I'm kind of working on a design. I did a layout a few years ago very similar to this one, and I've always loved it, and I don't even know if it was a sketch I used or where I got the idea from, but I just really loved the composition of the layout. So I've gone very similar on this one. And on the previous one I'd done a diagonal design, so I wanted to try and do horizontal on this one. And I tried sort of horizontal and I had a look and I wasn't sure on it, so then I tried diagonal and I had a bit of a play until I was happy. And you can see here I've got everything diagonally on the page. I've got those fishtails cut out, and I'm having the tops of each section of paper kind of staggered, so they're not all in line, and I will stitch those into place eventually on my sewing machine. But I'm just having a go here, embellishing, seeing how I think the page is going to come together. And I quite like this diagonal design, even though I'd planned for a horizontal today. I just preferred how it looked diagonal. I felt like, bizarrely, that it gave me some more white space on the page. Whereas with it going horizontally, I felt like it went completely from left to right and didn't offer as much white space. Now that's probably almost impossible because the pattern papers are the same regardless of whether they are diagonal or horizontal, but I just felt for some reason that this offered me more white space and I felt happier with it. So I've just used some sticky glue dots, just one behind each piece of paper, and I've done it kind of in the centre so that it's not going to run through my sewing machine and make my needle all tacky or sticky. And I'm just using white thread here, and I'm going to do a straight running stitch all the way through the tops of those. And like I said, I've staggered them just to make it a bit more interesting. And then rather than bringing the thread to the back of the page here like I normally would and sort of tying it off and sticking it down, I've decided I want to try and leave it at the front and tie it in a bow, which was a little bit fiddly for me, especially as it was really cold in my craft room. And my fingers just didn't want to work, but I do tie those into little bows eventually. I get there, and I just set the centre of those with a bit of glossy accents because that dries clear, but it means that those bows aren't going to untie at any point. So I'm happy with how that's looking. I am going to trim a little bit off the top of, I think it's just one piece of pattern paper. I just felt like it was too tall compared to the others. And then I just fold that edge up just to bring in a bit of texture and dimension. going to get my photo stuck in place. I've added a white border behind it to just help it pop off the page. It's something I always tend to do. I can print on my printer with a white border, but I find photo papers quite flimsy, so I actually like to just stick it onto some white cardstock. Makes it a lot more rigid. And then I've added a sheet of, or a layer, sorry, of green pattern paper behind that as well. Just because I felt like it needed something else. It felt a bit unfinished just having the white there. And I'm adding some foam behind my photo to raise it up off the page. And this is something again that I always like to do. I find that it doesn't matter how much I add to the page or how busy I make the page and embellish it, as long as my photo is raised up on foam and it's got that white border behind it, I find that it still pops off the page and it just doesn't get as lost. The title here today is very fitting. It's the name of the collection and it's The Magic of Christmas. And I'd actually picked this out to use on a previous layout, but then changed my mind. So this is from the Element sticker sheet, and I stuck it onto some white cardstock and trimmed around the edge just to make it, again, a bit like the photo, a bit more rigid, and it means I can raise it up on foam pads now. And it won't flatten in an album and stick to the background. You can raise stickers up on foam pads, but once it's pressed together with other layouts in an album, you'll find that it around the foam pad will stick to your background, and then you can see the foam pad behind and it dips in the middle where there isn't one. So I do prefer to put my stickers where possible onto white cardstock and then raise them up. Now onto the embellishing then, and I've got lots of fussy cut bits here. I absolutely adore this pattern paper. It's called Poinsettias and Pine, and I spent some time one evening in front of the telly fussy cutting pretty much the whole sheet, and that has given me loads of embellishments. I quite often find with Echo Park collections you don't get like a pack of floral die cuts, so having a paper like this is perfect because it means I can fussy cut that and almost invent myself a pack of floral die cuts. So I've cut loads of those out and I've arranged them in 2 clusters kind of diagonally through my photo, and I've built those up using different leaves off that paper and some poinsettias. And now I'm just coming back in with some more of those Element stickers. Now these ones are smaller, so I'm not sticking these to cardstock first. I'm going to stick these ones down directly onto the page. I'm not looking to raise them up with foam pads or anything, so don't mind if they get pressed down. But that title, I really wanted that to stand out with the foam, so that's why I've added some card behind that. And I almost added a Merry Christmas banner there. I really love those stickers, but I just couldn't make it work. Couldn't find a place for it on this page. So unfortunately that one's had to wait for another layout. And then I was almost finished at this point, and I felt like I wished I'd stitched around the edge of each of these pattern paper, kind of like banners, if you like. But it was obviously too late now. They were stuck down in place. I'd stitched across the top. So I pulled out a white, I think it's called a Uniball gel pen, and I'm just adding some fake stitching, just with a ruler, adding some white little dashes all around the edges of the pattern papers. I haven't bothered with that holly one in the middle because it wouldn't show up really anyway. But all the other ones, the reds and greens, the darker papers, I'm adding this faux stitching, and I love the detail this gives. And I love the white as well because a lot of the stickers in this collection have a white border on them. Obviously I've got the white title and the white border on my photo. I like the way this white pen looks on the papers. And that is pretty much me done. The only thing I'm going to do is add some foam pads to the pointed parts of these sort of fishtail banners, just because they've got a glue dot behind each one and they're stitched along the top, so they're stuck in place, they're not going to go anywhere, but I felt like I wanted a bit more dimension on the page. So by adding a foam pad underneath each of those points, just raises them up a bit, almost creates a bit of a shadowing on the page, and just makes it generally a bit more interesting. I do love to have lots of dimension. And there we go, that is my finished layout. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it on the process. You'll find links to all the products I've used on the Papermaze blog, and I'll pop a link in the description box below. I'll also pop a link to this collection in the store as well. I did make this layout a few weeks ago now, so at the time of making it there was loads of this collection still available, so I'll leave that link below, because I dare say we've all got lots of Christmas photos to scrap by now, so well worth checking that one out. So thanks for joining me. I'll leave you with the last the last few close-ups, and I'll see you next time.